Welcome to the Evolve to Succeed podcast. I am Warren Munson, the host of the podcast, where founders, entrepreneurs, business leaders and experts from a variety of sectors are interviewed to explore the link between personal and business success. In line with Evolve's principles, we also look at the importance of personal development, accountability and collaborative support in the pursuit of meaningful success. Through the insights of our guests, as well as my own business journey, the aim is to inspire you, the listener, to become better in life and in business. Welcome to this week's episode. My guest is Liz Willingham, founder and managing director of Lean PR, a PR agency based in Sandbanks in Poole. Liz founded the agency 23 years ago, having been a graduate of the UK's first PR degree. She is a chartered PR professional and since 2016 has sat as a non-executive director and is actually past president of Dorset Chamber. She also sits on the board of the British Chamber of Commerce and Trade. Liz is well known in the industry for her phenomenal levels of energy and an uncanny ability to network and influence the media and key stakeholders. She also places a lot of emphasis on lifelong learning, both for herself and importantly for her team, and is very focused on bringing a high level of emotional intelligence to both her work and personal life, things that we discussed during the course of this podcast. I've known Liz for some time and have always admired her positivity and commitment to self-improvement and honing her leadership and communication skills. So amongst other things in this podcast, Liz talks about the crazy early days of running the agency as a new mum.
I remember when Leila was literally babes in arms, I would sit with her, rocking her car seat under the desk with the MD of the client I was working with, just accepting all the noises and the rumbles.
Discusses the nuances and importance of emotional intelligence and recommends a great book on that subject.
For myself as a business leader, the amount of times I've applied it, just in general relationship building, I think, and all of the other work that I've done in recent years with the chambers, it comes into play in everything.
And reveals her hopes and ambitions for the future of business chambers of trade.
I feel that there is something new to do and a new perspective to create around this very established, very respected entity.
If you want to learn more about Evolve and the services we offer and our exciting up-and-coming events, our co-working space, our peer groups, coaching and development programs and all things Evolve, then please do take a look at evolvemembers.com. But for now, let's get on with the show. Liz, welcome to the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
Thank you.
Tell our listeners, please, a little about how and when Lean PR came about.
Well, it's I'm probably not the role model when it comes to sort of start-up business tactics and strategy. I never wrote a business plan.
Okay.
I never had any intention whatsoever of having one employee, and the business wasn't even a thing.
Okay.
I was busy working away at Poole Pottery as their PR manager, going through lots of change at Dolphin Quays and the evolution of the Poole Quay at the time, and I decided that I was going to go out on my own as a freelancer. Right. And that was pretty much as far as it was going to go.
So there was no grand plan
None.
to build an agency?
None.
It was just Liz on her own,
No.
self-employed.
Absolutely.
Let's give this a go.
Yes, it's been a very organic thing. And actually it's evolved really nicely because it's come from a very organic place. Really, communication is always something I was really passionate about. I think I was in the right place at the right time, having just graduated from the first PR degree of its kind in the UK. Decided I was going to stay in Dorset and got myself a nice couple of roles that I was in for like 2 to 3 years each. And then the opportunity started to come to me with the seeds being sown. Would you do some freelance work for me? Okay. And I thought, okay. And I just got married, wanted to have a family pretty quickly, and I thought, it'll just drop in around that, and then when I have the family, it'll all disappear. But it got bigger and bigger and busier and busier, and then, I needed to have staff to help me to answer the phone, looking after little ones, trying to answer the phone whilst breastfeeding. Clients didn't know half of that at the time. So yeah, that's literally how it came about.
So never destined to run your own business. It wasn't a lifelong ambition
Never.
for you, Liz.
No. I
Wow.
wanted to, as a teenager, I wanted to go into acting or, in terms of presenting, broadcasting. I dabbled in hospital radio when I was at sixth form. So that was the world I was planning to go in, but decided that maybe a professional, vocational degree might just be a little bit more sensible for me.
So you talked about that kind of those early days and, mixing kind of the family, children with growing the business, needing to take on some staff. But at some point in the journey, was there a moment of truth when you thought, God, this has momentum, got to take this seriously now, and things changed?
I think actually that was probably 3 weeks after having my daughter, Leila.
Okay.
I'd told my clients I had quite a few nice retainers by that stage when I was heavily pregnant, and I'd not really got my head around what it looked like beyond having the baby. I couldn't imagine not working. I also couldn't imagine what work would be like, and I'd never had a child before. I didn't really know. You don't get a guidebook of it's going to be busy, and everyone said you're going to be busy. I was like, I can't have been as busy as my day before. I
can
had.
manage this.
I can do it. So I literally just rolled with it, and I remember one of my clients phoning me a couple of weeks in to having Leila and saying, congratulations, all of that. The directors send their best wishes, but when are you getting back? Are you back? What are you doing? What are your plans? Because we want you back. And I said, give me 24 hours just to get my head around it. I'll come back to you. And they were like, great. And I thought, this momentum is I just would not want to lose this momentum. So let's get on with it.
Okay.
So that's where the craziness of probably 15 years or more, I think that's just when the craziness really began.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hasn't stopped.
No, it's different now, having older kids, having been through those school years with my youngest just about to finish sixth form next year. The school runs, the school plays, the sports days, fitting in the Christmas concerts. That's when the juggle is really intense. But I was always determined to be a full-time mum as much as a full-time business person. Right. That was something I was very passionate about. And I had family help, which was really key, especially in the early days. Yeah. But I never wanted to go down the nanny or the au pair route. That felt very wrong for me. It wasn't the way I was brought up. So, I've juggled all the balls.
To get to this point. And how do you think it affected the kids?
I always said, Warren, if I felt one day that I could see an effect on the kids, it would be game over. They would never be sacrificed for the state of the business. And they got dragged out to every photo call. They were rent-a-kid for every event that we needed for clients. I remember when Leila was literally babes in arms, I would sit with her, rocking her car seat under the desk with the MD of the client I was working with, just accepting all the noises and the rumbles. And people are really accepting if they know that you're juggling and you're going to give the best of yourself, and they really accommodate. So I was really, really blessed in the early days that I had great clients who were really open to helping me. But I've seen the kids grow up with such a wonderful work ethic, such an amazing ability to be agile, to appreciate people. They've been thrown into a lot of different social environments, learn how to behave in a social environment with events and that sort of thing, and how to interact and look at senior people in the eye and not be fazed by them. I think it's actually stood them in really good stead.
Had a really positive effect. And we'll come on to it, I'm sure, in the course.
Really positive.
But Leila's actually in the business now, isn't she?
They're very much so. I feel like I've won the lottery. I felt like I won the lottery when I had a boy and a girl. It's like having one of each is just amazing. But now as they've got older, and to have one who's so passionate about the business as much as I am, the trust that you have for your own flesh and blood to want to do the best thing for the business and take the level of ownership like she has I just feel so incredibly lucky.
Wow.
So incredibly lucky.
Well, we'll definitely come back to that during the course of this conversation. But is there any moments during the course of the time you've been running the business where you've sort of looked in the mirror and thought, I can't do this? I mean, what's the biggest challenge,
oh my gosh,
do you think?
I think we've all been there, the humps and the ups and downs, and the odd time with the bad debt where clients have we've had the odd client moment where we've done everything in good faith and goodwill, bought an awful lot of marketing on their behalf, and then they failed to pay. And that cuts like a knife.
Because that's not just time, is it?
No, it wasn't just our time. That
yeah.
was radio campaigns, outdoor poster sites, all sorts of bought-in, supplied work that had our name on the contract. And that was a naive thing for me. I'm a very trusting and honest person. I like to think others are open and trusting. I'd learnt a big lesson at that stage.
And do you think that changed your approach to business?
Definitely. We looking back, I think how naive that we're a relationship building business. As comms professionals, we are in the game of building relationships. And we'd like to think we work with like-minded people who have the same values as ourselves. And we never had client contracts for years. We used to pride ourselves on saying, look, we'll have a 4-week notice period, but if it's not working out, we're not going to tie you up to months. We're not going to tie you up to loads of paperwork. And clients used to really like that. But the world has evolved massively. Our landscape has evolved massively. Yeah. And yes, those sorts of experiences. And you grow up, don't you? We're 23
definitely.
Years in. At the time, we were based very much on goodwill. And we had very loyal clients that worked with us on a retained basis, and we never had any problems. But you're going to get that one moment where you go, right, I think we need to tighten up. And it was actually the recession, the 2008 recession, where I thought, no, this is where our contracts are not robust enough. No. And you get the odd employee contract where you think, yeah, that's a bit too loose as well. So you just tighten up the reins as you go. Yeah. But sometimes you have to learn the hard way, don't you?
You do live and learn, and sometimes, as you say, that can be the hard way.
Painful.
And you talk about it there, you talk about 23 years plus running your own business. I mean, what's happened in the world of PR? How's the world of PR and comms changed in that time?
Just beyond all recognition. It's been a relatively gradual creep, although you say that. 23 years ago, I was stuffing envelopes with hard photographs with labels on the back of them with captions on them that I'd run in and out of the lab to pick up a batch of photos and then shove them into hardback envelopes with labelling up all of the media, relationships we had, and it would all be down the post office. Yeah. And so it would take a week probably to get a press release pulled together, sent over to the client by fax for their approval. They'd eventually get it back. It felt busy and paced at the time, but my goodness, it was really quite leisurely, really, and quite onerous. And now we are rattling out communications, whether it's through social, whether it's through, through email or all the types of channels that we now have that we didn't have then. No. So bearing in mind that mobile phones didn't exist. I mean, you almost forget a world before all of this stuff was there. Yeah. And I remember getting funding to get a rabbit aerial on the outside of our Sandbanks offices so that we could start to dabble on email. Just phenomenal changes. And people laugh at me. It's sort of like, that can't have been a real thing. You used to print off every press release and stick it in the post. Yep.
The world has changed, isn't it? But good and bad, I suppose, because I suppose bad news stories that companies get involved in and that kind of crisis management probably comes to the fore more, doesn't it?
Very
now
much
that
so.
Everything can be on a turn.
Social media has changed the game for crisis. Yeah. We are now citizen journalists. We can all have a view and broadcast it. It's just become an unwieldy process, but there are processes in place, and ultimately we advise clients on tone and approach and doing the right thing. And as long as clients are prepared to do that, then we can work with it and we can manage it, bring it right back down. People just want to be heard. If you give them the opportunity, but manage what they're saying is accurate and respond to it appropriately, you can calm it down.
Definitely. It's interesting. And I suppose this is a podcast for business owners, leaders. And what advantages do you think is brought by a business and an organisation having a PR agency rather than perhaps there's more of a tendency to do it now is manage your own PR and comms in-house? What are the benefits that an agency brings?
I think there is merit in both. there is nothing like having ownership of your PR, and we have clients that have in-house teams as well as ourselves, and we work very collaboratively with them. And it's often about how important the business feels comms are to them. And obviously, we would want to work with clients who put comms at the heart of everything. Yeah. The perspective that we come from is reputation management first.
Okay.
So by managing reputation, which I believe is the biggest asset that any business has, it takes a phenomenally long time to earn it. You can dash it in a second if you get it wrong. If you haven't got the resources or the skill to really maintain that reputation and keep it clean and tidy and evolving and communicated, then you could be having some weak spots. Okay. So I think there is merit. I think it's just as long as business leaders put comms at the heart of everything they do. And there are some that really do, and they reap the rewards, and others that just find it really difficult to understand why they should.
It's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because it's a myth, isn't it, that all business owners are egotistical or look at me. A lot of business owners, leaders do a great job, but they don't want to be vocal. They don't want to be the face.
And actually, that's we've got clients who are very humble, who have been, in family businesses particularly. That's where we feel we have a strong affinity, because we really understand the DNA of a family business owner, especially if they've been multi-generation, because they feel very much they're the current guardian, they're the baton holder. This is about keeping it in ship shape, ready for the next generation. And so they're by nature all very humble, very don't like too much profile about themselves. And it's really important for us that we adopt their tone of voice that is really authentic and very comfortable to them. And I think for those that haven't dabbled in PR before, there is that anxiety that we can be very showy, very brash. Look at me. And it actually, that isn't the best approach to PR. It's about being authentic, being real, and being true to yourself and your brand. And we come in and we really immerse ourselves in those businesses to get under the skin of why they think the way they do, how they operate, and we adopt how they would communicate about themselves. If they had to be on the front face, what would they say and how would they say it? And we quickly adopt that, and then you see them relax and go, this is much better than I thought it was going to be. I was a bit anxious, but I'm a total convert. And then you often find they totally get it, and then they're all over it and they cannot get enough of it.
Because they've got that trusted tone of voice.
Exactly. They feel that they're being represented the right way.
Yeah, it's a good tip, good hint. And what about those businesses and organisations that think, well, we just haven't got any stories?
There's always a story. But newsworthiness is really key. And we build really good partnerships with the media, and we don't expect them to write something which they will look at and go, why aren't you speaking to our ad guys in the next room? It's got to be true to news, be interesting to readers, and you'd be amazed what people find interesting to read, and you'd be amazed what a journalist would be prepared to write. But don't disrespect them and throw a load of information at them that just because you think it's exciting to have a new website, why is a new website to the wider world about your organisation really that fascinating? Unless it's doing something really unique, it's doing something for the first time, or
it's just finding those
it's
stories.
digging down. It's digging down. Definitely.
And the world of press has changed, hasn't it? I mean, there was a time, even 10 years ago, where local press, national press had depth in numbers, and that's scale because of the economies and that industry and the challenges it faces. So how's that affected your business?
It was interesting when social media was being uncovered as a new channel and people were experimenting with it, and we were early adopters of it. And thank God we were, but at the time it was interesting because people thought, we could hear people at events talking about the fact it's those lot, they're playing with Facebook, what a waste of time, it won't be here in 5 minutes. And they were judging how we were adopting it early. I like to try and lead from the front. I try to make sure that we're not behind the curve on things, and so that's always been a real priority to me. So I got to the point where I thought, I don't care if this is not around for another 5 years. We have to understand what the impact of this is. And obviously, as we all know now, it's become one of the biggest opportunities for the comms industry that we've ever had. And yes, it's been threatening to traditional media, and digital comms has really affected the traditional media, and we've seen a lot of fallout from that. And the big tech companies, the Facebooks, the Googles, have got a responsibility for seeing the change of our media landscape, especially regionally.
Yeah.
However, thankfully, the strong ones have all been able to adapt with an online version, which actually gives us even more opportunity.
Yeah.
And you're now seeing the likes of Facebook and Google investing back into the regional media, and our own local press have paid for reporters brought through by the big tech companies.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
So
they
they kind of had to,
Yeah.
in the end. It was the right and proper thing for them to do. You can have a debate over, was it too little, too late?
Yeah.
A lot of regional journalists have vanished, gone into PR.
Yeah.
A lot of regional papers have gone to the wall.
Yeah.
And ultimately, society needs freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Our leaders need to be made accountable. And there's no one best to make them accountable than the media.
Yeah.
And our journalists are taught to make our leadership accountable.
In a professional manner.
Sometimes in a professional manner. But
Okay.
interestingly, I did some judging for the Society of Editors recently for their regional press awards and their columnist of the year. And that was a really fascinating process because it reassured me that journalists are still determined to give the voice of the people into publishing all over our nation, and they're doing it really very, very well. So across our aisles, we are still standing firm with good journalism, which is just fantastic.
Fantastic. So turning to your business and a little bit more on how you run it, you quote on your website and you talk about how your team's emotional intelligence is a hallmark of the work you do. I mean, how do you define, I suppose, emotional intelligence, and how do you gauge someone's emotional intelligence, perhaps during that recruitment phase?
I think this is a really interesting subject, and a lot of it is intuitive. And I think if you're a naturally emotionally intelligent person, you can spot it in 5 minutes of a conversation with someone else, whether they have it or not.
Yeah.
So it's not something that we build in strategically into our recruitment process. It's a subliminal. We're constantly looking for someone who understands the nuances, who reads between the lines, who's got great people skills, who has empathy. And I think all of these things are traits of the emotional intelligent person. And I'm not sure that you can make an emotionally intelligent person. I think it's got to be within the DNA, and you can hone those skills. And I brought my favourite book on the subject with me today, which is Daniel Goleman's Working with Emotional Intelligence, which is the follow-up to his original one about emotional intelligence. And he had such an overwhelming response to this book when he wrote it about how it fits in the workplace that he wrote this. And my sister gave this to me back in August 2005.
Wow.
Which, is really interesting, and it's got lots of little sort of
it's a well-read
cornered.
book, listeners.
But ultimately, this is all about trying to help those in the workplace become more emotionally intelligent. But I get from it a great reassurance, because I think as a comms professional, everything we do, we have to look at a scenario and make a judgment call to advise clients with good counsel, the tone of voice, the approach, and what is someone actually really saying here? What's the unsaid?
Yeah.
And you need to apply that emotional intelligence to be able to really cut through, be persuasive in your communication. And so the team, I think, automatically have those skills when they join us.
Yeah.
They're able to listen to their clients, because often clients don't really know what they want. They know what they don't want. They don't often know what they want. So understanding the nuances of the client relationship, being able to build strong bonds with the clients and that trust, they have to have some emotional intelligence to be able to do that. So I think it's something that should come organically with our profession, really.
And you'd say it's probably one of the biggest skills you need, or attributes you need to be in PR?
Yeah, I think so. But I think, for myself as a business leader, the amount of times I've applied it, just in general relationship building, I think, and all of the other work that I've done in recent years with the chambers, it comes into play in everything you
absolutely.
do. And I think it's something that we welcome to have. You can connect with a client and you know straight away that they've got that emotional intelligence, and it's just a breath of fresh air when you can just talk on a wavelength where you know exactly what you're trying to achieve in your communications. And I think by reputation, we go back to that reputation thing again, being authentic is really, really important in how you communicate as a brand. So understanding where the emotional attachment is with your brand and with your audiences is really key.
Okay, I get that, I can understand that, I can see how that all fits in, and thank you for the book recommendation as well.
Yes, I mean, it's getting a bit old now, isn't it, really? But it's interesting. Whenever you dip in and out of it, it gets more and more and more relevant all the time.
I think good business books or good self-development books stand the test of time, don't they?
Definitely.
So a good communication strategy, we've talked about that quite a lot already in this kind of conversation, needs to cut through the clutter, and that sometimes is seen as that holy grail for any company. If you could name just maybe 3 to 5 simple but crucial steps to ensure you do stand out from the crowd, what would they be?
In all honesty, I think it would be bespoke to your brand and what you're trying to achieve. And I feel very strongly that communications and PR strategy should be discussed at board level. It should be from the highest level, and it should sit in parallel with your business objectives, and your comms person should be allowed into those conversations to be able to guide and steer, because often what a management team think is a good idea could have reputational risks or implications which often can be got over, but it's much easier to create something with that starting point of what are we trying to achieve and where are all the trip hazards to achieve it. I think making sure your brand personality is really, really understood, your brand values, get that brand work done up front.
Okay, so
understand,
even before you engage in any form of comms or PR,
for sure,
develop that brand.
Understand what it is you stand for, what are people going to hook onto, what makes you different. I think also about, who is your spokespeople. So often people start going out and communicating and then they haven't thought about who is the leadership, the humans, the whites behind the eyes. And often the leader doesn't want to be that front-facing spokesperson. But it's kind of a bit late once your media is asking you, well, can you do an interview for me on this subject? Oh, actually, who do we use? That needs to be thought about up front. But I think as long as you've got the right integrity around your communications and you have a strong product, and polishing a turd is a real term, it's a real thing. And it's very, very difficult to promote positively a product or a service that just hasn't really got the depth of quality in it. So actually, whilst you're asking for crucial steps to make sure you stand out from the crowd, I'd almost go back a stage and go tick the boxes of the basics to make sure you know that your brand values are absolutely robust and that you can't be pulled up on them, that your spokespeople are true, going to represent you well. Yeah. Just because they're the MD doesn't mean that they're the right spokespeople. And don't fudge it. Get your product really, really honed, and things will always advance and improve over time, but don't go out too early. And I know, the startups is a classic example of that. Make sure your product is really, 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 really
you understand robust. It and you know it,
and you know it's going to deliver. Yeah,
that's great advice. Build those foundation blocks and build it from there. I suppose when we talk about spokespeople, we've got the Olympics on at the moment, and you can just see how media trained a number of particularly the elite, high-profile athletes are, perhaps. Compared to some of the comms that you get from the up-and-coming athletes, and you get some really honest and great interviews with them. Where do you sit on business leaders being media trained?
We do a lot of media training with clients, and we advise it quite a lot. I think getting the right spokesperson, as we just said, is really key, because they do need to be human and relatable. Not you can media train someone and over engineer them so they become so robotic,
and you take
don't
all personality
exactly
out, don't you? Yeah.
But equally, you do not want a leader that in the time of crisis looks like a rabbit in headlights and looks like the organisation really doesn't know what it's doing, because that is so damaging. And I'm sure we've all been aware of crisis where they just weren't ready for it. And I think, we talk to clients about crisis planning when it's at a time when they don't need to worry about it. And often you'll find that they feel, we'll be all right in a crisis, we would be okay. No. Everything goes to the wall, and you need your roadmap to be able to get you out of it. And having that rehearsed and understood in advance just helps save so many trip hazards. It really does.
Upskilling enough to be able to manage the communications when needed, but not
and
take the personality out.
No, but my view is, if you're prepared and you've got your crisis document in the cupboard ready to draw on as and when, sod's law will kick in, and the likelihood is you will never need it.
Yeah, well, it's a nice place to be in. So we're all in that place. You've also talked actually during the course of the conversation so far about, I think, your own strong values, principles, the kind of clients that you like to work with. What have you ever turned clients down? What would make you turn a client down?
We don't like to turn clients down. Everyone has a great story. We're not sector specific, so we cut across all sizes of organisation and all sectors. When it comes to really having to be forceful about turning them down, it's about reputational risk. And whilst it could be contradictory, because obviously we are here to create and maintain good reputations for clients, we also have our own reputation, which is really important to us. And anything that's going to align wrongly, we mustn't go there. We're also all members of the Chartered Institute of Public Relations, our governing body, and through that charter we are bound by their guidance to run an ethical service. And so anything that compromises ethics, we have to be super careful. And if a client wanted us to go down a route, or they had values that we didn't really feel aligned with, we would decline the opportunity. But thankfully, we haven't had to do that. We've had the odd time when we've had a conflict of interest, where we've had a major client in a sector that were very specific that they had us to themselves on an exclusive basis, and that arrangement was made, and that meant that everyone else in that sector we weren't able to work with, unfortunately. But thankfully it doesn't happen too often.
Okay. And we talked about Leila, your daughter, being in the business. I mean, what dynamic has that really added to your business?
It's been huge, actually, and the pandemic really heightened that, because we had the opportunity to be working together physically closely under the same roof when obviously everyone else was working remotely. We were able to really bounce off each other, make some big decisions together, and I think she probably did her business degree in a year in equivalent because she suddenly saw the potential impact of what was going to change in our world. And in March, when the first lockdown started to hit, we had no idea, and none of us really knew what the full impact was going to be. And we all went into quiet panic mode. But obviously you draw in all of those experiences, and thankfully, whilst 23 years has gone by in a flash, and I still remember Leila being pushed around the peninsula outside the office most of the afternoon so that I could get a load of press releases done, which meant that she never slept all night, which in hindsight was foolish. But now we're here. She's at 21, but has got a great business mind, and always has done, actually. Even when she was quite young, she would be challenging me on because we've always had open conversations around the dinner table. So I could draw on my past experience of previous recessions and crisis times in the economy, and she had the rawness of instinct, intuition, that emotional intelligence, knowing where our brand values sat. And she was integral to helping frame our plans. Do we furlough? Do we not furlough? If we are going to furlough, who do we? What's the message we give to the team? How do we approach it? Do we make it a collaborative thing? All of these things are going around in your mind as what is a very us approach to this. And she helped and really was determined to make sure that everything we did was very us and true to our way of working, and she nailed it every time. And the response from the team was bang on every time. So she's a natural. I'm so lucky that she's been born with the natural skills. She writes beautifully. She presents beautifully. She's very confident. She's very financial savvy. She knows her numbers. So she's now being more and more brought into the weeds of every aspect of the business.
Wow.
And we have a really exciting sort of game plan. I don't think I'll ever want to sort of step back fully from the business, but certainly there will come a time and a place, and I think probably around 4 or 5 years' time, she will take the helm.
Wow, so it must have completely changed your outlook
Massively.
on the future and the
Massively.
business.
There is no decision made now without her input.
Right.
Often she tweaks it for the better.
Yeah.
And thankfully we've got other members of the team in a leadership role that give the balance.
Yeah.
So it's triage. So it's not just my way or Leila's way.
Yeah.
There is a
blended
debate.
approach.
Yeah, very much so. But no, she's a real talent, and I cannot thank my lucky stars enough.
So where do you stand with nature and nurture there?
She's soaked it in like a sponge. You know, I've got friends who say to me now, do you remember all those conversations of the evening when she'd just sit and listen to everything and you'd be like over a glass of wine going, I don't want you to hear that. She was just all ears all the time.
Right.
And in events and being out with clients, she was just absorbing everything. But she has been born with natural skills that I don't think I could have taught her. I think they're just there.
So it's a great combination of both.
But massively.
Yeah.
Massively. It's quite fascinating, really.
Yeah. It's great to see, listeners, there's a look of pride on your face.
Oh,
in having her in the business and succession potential to her.
Amazing.
And all that kind of stuff.
I trust her wholeheartedly to do the right thing. I also know that she, when she's ready, will be braver than perhaps I was at times. More risk-taking.
Even than you in your early days?
Well, because it's a very different scenario. She's taking on a platform that already exists.
She's got the
I didn't know
foundations
what it was. I just rolled with it. She's picking up something and then deciding where to go with it. And she's got big ambitions.
Okay. Watch this space.
Very much, yeah.
Brilliant. And you've launched a podcast together, haven't you?
Yes. Yeah, that's been a real joy, actually. And in a year or so that we haven't been able to get out and network, and that's been a really key part of the business growth for me, as being out, being present, getting to know people, building those relationships, building that trust, and just being in the right place at the right time to try and pick up new business. We haven't had that opportunity. No. So the podcast actually has been a great way for us to keep connecting with new business leaders, especially in the family business space, because the stories are phenomenal. And it's been really moving at times, some of the dynamics that we've come across. But yeah, really enjoying that process.
And it's called Keep It in the Family, isn't it?
It runs in the family.
It runs in the family, sorry.
Yeah. So no, we've dealt with probably so many sectors so far. It's unbelievable. But yeah, plenty more to come there.
And we've also talked about COVID and started to talk about the effect. But during that process, you've introduced, as I understand it, the Lean PR 1-2-3 model for remote working. Tell us about that, and what have you seen and experienced since it was implemented, Liz?
It was Leila driven. She believed very much that we needed to get out early with putting our stall out on this. And we actually started implementing this last August. So I think in our industry, we were probably one of the first to introduce this. And others were looking at 4-day weeks and that sort of thing. But we're an always on business. Yeah. Our clients need our attention 24/7. So we weren't in any mind for doing that. However, the 1-2-3 model, bear in mind that we've got team that are based all over the place. They're not just all based here near our offices. We have Tuesday and Wednesday where we ask everyone to be in the office where they can, to be together, because especially for young members of the team or junior members of the team, that interaction, that learning, watching the body language, overhearing a conversation is so important to their learning. But we also appreciate that there is now a new joy in the flexibility of being able to work from home. So Mondays, Thursdays, Fridays, they can work from home, or they can work from a client's offices, which we would encourage, or any other environment where it's safe, secure, and that they can get on and be productive and feel creative. So there's a lot more flexibility now in their working day if they feel that they're not, we've got staff who are having post-vaccine problems and, they just take the time down and they'll make it up when they feel they've got the energy back. And that's great. So it's just giving them the empowerment to own their work, enjoy their work at their best time.
Yeah. Particularly, I suppose, being a creative business, that's really important.
And you can't force that.
No.
If you're not a morning person and you're being made to brainstorm ideas at 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, well, that's just not going to be productive.
Yeah.
So
Brilliant.
now this formula gives us that flexibility and it's going down really, really well.
Fantastic. And I think, we've been early out to say Mondays, Wednesdays, everybody in. Tuesday, Thursday, Fridays, complete kind of flexibility. It'd be nice to see you in the office one of those 3 days.
And the office is open every day if they want it to be.
Definitely.
If there's always a communication of actually I might go in the office today, is anyone else coming in? Oh yeah, well if you're going in, I'll come in. And so there's always that little bit.
But I do think it's necessarily for our trainees and the young
very much
developing to be around people and they just subsume information.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important, we're human beings, aren't we? And for me, you can see the spirit in our team lift as soon as we're able to do that Mondays, Wednesdays.
Yeah.
Because they want to connect.
Yes.
They want to be around people.
Yes, exactly. And the learnings that they get from each other, so that, we want people to advance. We want to bring people through. We've got great career progression plans for them, but we don't want that to slow down because they're just not exposed to their peers. Perhaps as much as they were before. So it's a balance.
I think it's going to be an interesting dynamic that across a wide range of industries, isn't it? Is
huge.
Trainees and apprentices and those that were on that development curve.
I think
will they ever catch up, or how long will it take them to catch up?
I just don't know how it's going to roll, and we've now got people who are just refusing to go back to an office, who just really want to be home based, and everyone has that right to put that forward, but whether that works in reality, and you've got companies like Google now renegotiating salaries downwards for those who want to work from home 100%. And where does the London weighted salary fit in anymore? Yeah. And for us in the regions, does that cause us a problem when we're recruiting? Because your next door neighbour could have a London weighted salary, but they're working in the room next door.
So they now could be part of your kind of pool of people to attract into your business.
Yes.
But they're expected and used to that higher weighting, aren't they?
It's going to mess up everything that we've always known. So who knows where it's going to go?
Who knows? Watch this space. Talking about, you've also been, throughout your time that I've known of you in the business community, you've always given a lot back. And more recent years, you've been president of the Dorset Chamber of Commerce. You've been involved with the British Chamber of Commerce on their board. I believe you still are. Why is it so important to you to give back and get involved in those kind of organisations?
Well, I think it's two-way. I mean, yes, giving back is really important. And I grew up with a father who was heavily involved in our town chamber down in Cornwall, and I know how passionate he was about it. And it's served me very well here in Dorset to be part of Dorset Chamber as a member for the whole time that the business has operated. And I've really enjoyed being part of that network, and I think being part of a very loyal business community. I see them as friends. We all look out for each other, and the business has been served well from that. So I felt that it was time that I could contribute something. And I also feel that you get to a stage in your career and in your business life that there is so much to learn. And it's like going on a course. It's a very different perspective that you're thrown into this environment with other individuals who might be like-minded, but from different sectors, have different perspectives, have different backgrounds. And so to throw yourself into the mix with that, I think is very, very healthy. And I've learned a lot from that, and I've enjoyed it immensely. So
it's about then fueling that and making sure that maintains for the next generation.
And I did feel that chambers are misunderstood entity.
Yeah.
It's misperceived. It's seen as old fusty. I think the word chambers doesn't help because people have this vision of legal chambers with like hooded cloaks and whatever. And that is a perception problem that we have as part of the business network that we traditionally have in this country. But I feel that there is something new to do and a new perspective to create around this very established, very respected entity. And I'd like to think that I'm slowly nudging it on a local level and a national level into a new era. And there is an appetite.
There's definitely a place for chambers, isn't it? I mean, I'm very passionate. My favourite saying is put like-minded people together and great things happen. And at the best and at heart, that's what a chamber is.
And especially at times like this, people want to be around a trusted, existing, established, safe environment. And that's what chambers creates, But I've enjoyed it immensely. I feel like I've contributed, I've made a difference. A new way of thinking, I think, has been encouraged. And it's just about finding your inner confidence to speak your mind in that forum and say, what about this? And being prepared to be bold.
Wow. How do you find your inner confidence?
How do I find my inner confidence?
Because I think a lot of business leaders struggle with that, don't they?
Do you?
I do. I think you've got... I go back
to... The imposter syndrome is
Yeah.
huge. And I remember going for my interview with the panel for the British Chambers board place, went up to London, and I took it very much. We, as business leaders, you don't get the opportunity to get interviewed very often. So that in itself is a good experience, isn't it? It's good to push you out of your comfort zone every now and again. But I came out of that and I was like, that's not gone my way at all. That they really did play good cop, bad cop. And I felt that, I probably didn't perform as I should have done. So the shock when I got the call to say, excellent candidate, we very much want you in, I was, really? God, the bar must have been really low. And they were like, no, not at all.
But that's that imposter piece, isn't it?
Oh, horrendous. Yeah. And I don't know that you ever really grow out of that. And I think the older maybe you get and the more self-aware you get, you have to get the inner voice put in the back of the room. But the imposter syndrome is really crippling thing if you let it get to you.
Definitely. Well, that moves us neatly onto another subject that I wanted to cover. But when we talk about that inner voice, is about mental health awareness. Again, something both as a business leader and both of your time with the chambers, you've been really vocal about is that mental health of business owners, entrepreneurs and leaders is not something that's discussed enough.
No, and it's been something I've been very passionate about since I've been really involved at the board level with Dorset Chamber. And then when I was asked to become president, I just felt that it was become more and more of a heightened subject. This is way before the pandemic. And so in my first year of being president, I really championed the issue around mental health awareness in the workplace, workplace stress, and was keen to sort of, for a chamber to look at doing things differently, networking differently, putting people into their comfort zones of whether it be yoga or running or networking in a different way, even if it's just a hike across the Jurassic Coast. And I think that people were generally doing that anyway. And I thought that as a chamber to embrace new members and maybe a different level of membership, that was the way to go. But as the presidency evolved, I was then asked to do a second term. And it literally would have been 2 to 3 months before the pandemic really hit us. And I did my speech and I was very passionate that this needs honing down now to the business leader resilience piece, that what is going to keep the mental health of our business leaders in check so that the rest of our economy, just the cogs keep working. If you've got a leader of organisation who's a bit broken, where does it really trickle down all the way through especially with a smaller business?
Definitely.
So I put it out there, and then obviously the pandemic struck, and it was right place, right time, and we developed an initiative called Got Your Six, which thankfully, Warren, you jumped and helped and came on board as one of the champions of that. And it's been, the response to that has been phenomenal, and it has been really apparent to me that there is no panic button or Samaritan specifically for the business leader who has so many complications to consider around their own personal reputation, their own ability to lead a group of people, for them to continue to have respect for them, and for their clients to continue to want to work with them. Who wants to have a supplier who is a little bit broken? So often all of this pressure is kept inwardly focused, and that isn't sustainable for any of us as human beings. There's got to be an outlet for it. So I felt that putting the conversation on the table was really critical, and organisations like Mind, Paul Farmer, who's the chief exec of Mind, thinks this is a fantastic initiative, is really behind it, and I think there's just room to grow and grow and grow this.
Definitely, and yet you're right, it's that as a business owner, leader, sometimes you feel you can't share.
It's a very lonely place sometimes.
And it's a really lonely place, and the support
and the temptation is, especially when you're focused on your reputation, you're just like, I just need to keep this to myself and get in the morning and put my game face on.
Lock it away, game face on, and
off we go. If they've not slept all night because they've been up fretting over something, you know, what quality of leadership is it really going to have? So it's a big subject.
Definitely. And is there any, I know you've spoken very openly on different forums about, you know, that it's an issue that you've also been aware of yourself. So have you got any strategies that you follow that improves, or approaches you take that you think improves your own mental health?
I think giving yourself time and space to work out your own personal strategy for any business leader, for anyone, let alone if they're a business leader, is really important. What might work for me might not work for you. I know that my appreciation of nature, and there are some staple things that we all know. I'm watching the trees blowing in the reflection there of behind us in the office here, and being around nature, being around woodland, the beach, the natural environment. I need that like drugs. If I don't get that built into my hopefully day, but definitely week, I'm not shipshape. I practice meditation as much as I can, and I have done that for a very long time, but I think, like all of these things, you have phases where you just fall off the wagon a bit, and something needs to remind you that actually it's very, very effective, it's very powerful. And a friend last year, actually, a long-standing friend of mine, sat me down and said, you need to start focusing on this. And she became my accountability partner and was checking in with me every morning to say, 10 minutes, have you fitted in? You've got to do it. And it does work. It really does work. And the apps are there very successfully for all those reasons. They're simple, easy to buy into, and you're being spoon-fed what you need each day. But walking, being active, I mean, we all know this stuff. But just building in the amount that you know you need.
It's having that, and I think the thing I've learned in my own journey, and if I look at times when things are going well and there's balance, whereas times when I may be a bit fraught and a bit manic, and you know, not making probably some of the best decisions I've ever made. The times when it's good, there's lots of self-care going on. There's exercise, there's getting out, there's getting away from the desk, there's doing some breath work or meditation. But in hindsight's wonderful, isn't it? But I can nearly align great self-care with when the business has gone well, because I've been in the right place, in the right frame of mind.
Absolutely.
And in a strong position compared to when it all gets a bit frantic and you leave that self-care behind then, because that's the first thing you do. You go, I need some time.
Exactly.
Ditch that, and then
it all starts to go down again.
I
know. I remember once having a conversation of my end of year accounts and being asked the question, how on earth have you done this? And it's a great year. I don't quite know. And I reflected back, and I'd spent, as you were saying, that year really focused on my wellness. I was practicing gratitude every day in different formats. I really, really was disciplining myself to just appreciating the nuts and bolts of what was good about my world. And it literally transformed into numbers, which is incredible, because I'm not a numbers-driven person. I just roll with things and hope they come out all right at the other end. It's kind of worked so far.
Inevitably they do.
but that is an absolute. I had evidence.
That's good self-care.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Getting your head into a different zone, giving your brain is such an incredible organ.
Yeah.
We expect so much of it. It never stops. It fires all day, all night. It's going. And to just give it a bit of bandwidth, a little bit every day, you will just reap the rewards.
It's mind fitness, I've heard it described as, and that's what it's about, isn't it? You get in this term, mental health has its own connotations, isn't it? But it's about mind fitness, mind health, and treating it as a muscle and
exactly, and giving it some treats, taking it into woodland. Trees give off hormones. They physically give off hormones that make you feel better. So by sticking yourself in a woodland with a load of trees, and give one a hug every now and again. My inner hippie.
I have seen a picture in researching for this podcast of you hugging a tree, Liz, so it's something you clearly do.
My inner hippie is coming out here. The Cornish girl will out eventually.
She'll come out eventually. Brilliant. So as we start to just round off the kind of podcast, is there anybody out there, obviously you're in a comms PR world, you get to assess a lot of business leaders, personalities, sports personalities, the whole raft thing, social influencers, what it may be. But is there anybody out there that you particularly admire for their comms skills?
I would say all my clients, wouldn't I? And actually, I do have clients who I'm just so proud of and so proud to be associated with, because I think they deliver themselves beautifully. But I'm not here to plug everyone else today. That's a really difficult one. And you were talking about the Olympics earlier. And what I loved this week was that 13-year-old skateboarder.
Yeah, she's amazing.
What a little star. And I know that she's had a heck of a background already, and a real champion in surfing and skateboarding. But what I loved about her ability, and I think we could all learn from it, is that her authenticity was just amazing. Yes, obviously she's had the media training, but because of her age, it was very raw. And I thought it was charming. And actually, I think a lot of our Olympiads now, when I've watched their responses, they've been really measured. I don't think they've sounded too over-engineered at all. But I think brands like Innocent have really stuck true to the way they communicate. I'm talking brands now rather than individuals.
Yeah, but it's a good reflection, isn't it? Because even after they're taken over by Coca-Cola,
the big boys, they've managed to keep that endearing quality about them. And I think the Black Lives Matter scenario played out with them being very open and honest, saying, hands up, we haven't really looked at this the way we should have done, and we're now going to address it. And I know other brands did that as well. So those leaders behind those organisations, I respect them greatly for doing the right thing. And there is a confidence in being open and transparent. And there's a time and a place to put your hands up and say we've done something wrong. And in the main, society supports that.
Brilliant. Okay. And then one final question for you. It is the Evolve to Succeed podcast. So what's your own personal definition of success, Liz?
Oh, my goodness. Happiness. But what does happiness constitute? It's different for others. Being able to live comfortably, not looking over your shoulder financially, I think, for me, having an upbringing that at times felt very vulnerable in that environment. Losing my father very young made me feel very vulnerable, and it was kind of my way or the highway. I have to make my life work. No one else is going to do it for me. Was a great driver. And to be able to have said, right, I've done that, I've ticked that box. Being able to bring a child into the world who is now loving and thriving on the opportunity that I've created feels a huge measure of success.
Absolutely.
Being able to connect with like-minded people on such the volume that I've had the privilege to work with and meet some amazingly talented people, I feel that that's a measure of success. So I think there's lots of different measures, isn't there?
Definitely. There isn't one single thing.
But there's still loads to do.
Yeah.
I'm feeling very ambitious at the moment. I feel like I want to do something big, and my friends say to me, you've got enough on your plate.
Well.
But I don't know. I've got the bit between my teeth. There's all sorts of ideas that come to me, and when I had to self-isolate with my son recently, and I either completely went a bit bonkers or I became inspired. I don't know which end of the spectrum it went, but yeah, Leila was like, "Oh, what is this now?"
Mum.
She puts me back in my box.
Brilliant. If people want to learn more about you, Liz, more about Liz Lean PR, where can they go?
Go to www.lizleanpr.co.uk, but equally find me on LinkedIn, drop me a direct message. I always love to hear from everyone. So get in touch. It'd be great to have a conversation.
Brilliant. You've been a wonderful guest on the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
Thank you. It's been great fun.
Good. What a remarkable story that Liz's daughter Leila was born just when Liz was starting her agency and has now become an integral part of that same business. Having one of your children there to learn from you and add their own knowledge and advice to the business, to watch them evolve and develop and be there to possibly take over the reins when you decide to leave must be a wonderful and enviable position to be in. I felt that Liz's passion and incredible depth and knowledge around PR and communications is incredibly valuable, and I hope you took heed of her insights. Because as business owners, I think we sometimes take good communications and PR for granted, or perhaps even see it as something to do on the side of the business, almost as an afterthought, instead of it being integral to the company's values and success. Done well, PR and communications is an art form, as I'm sure some of you listening to this podcast can attest to, it can work miracles. Thank you for listening, and if you do want to learn more about Evolve, then please do go to evolvemembers.com. You can register there for our weekly insights and newsletter, as well as learn about the services that we offer at Evolve, including our peer groups, one-to-one coaching, courses for teams, as well as our lovely co-working space in Ashley Cross in Poole. And if you are a business leader in Dorset and Hampshire, then I'm really excited to be able to say that through the Dorset LEP and the Solent LEP, we have some fully funded peer network and peer group programs that we can offer to you. So if you want to learn more, again, go to the website or please call the team. I really do hope you've enjoyed this episode, and if so, please help us by rating, reviewing and subscribing and listening to future episodes. Thank you for listening.